I never expected a single sentence to erase decades of sacrifice, but that's exactly what happened the night my mother looked at me through the cold glow of a family video call and said, "Stay away from your sister's graduation. You're not welcome there." No raised voice. No explanation. Just a command delivered with the ease of someone who had forgotten I was human. Riley, my younger sister, sat beside her, hiding a smug smile she didn't even bother to conceal. My father stared at the floor like the pixels in the carpet were more important than the daughter on his screen. And in that single moment, something inside me didn't break, it woke up. I used to believe being the responsible one meant keeping quiet, smoothing tension, and carrying burdens no one saw. My name is Amber, and for most of my life, my role in the family wasn't daughter, it was provider. Emotional provider. Financial provider. Stability provider. But that night, that role cracked. Growing up, my mother, Lorraine, was the kind of woman people treated like a son. Everything revolved around her mood, her needs, her comfort. My father, Victor, stayed in her orbit, never resisting, never questioning. Riley flourished in that warmth, the adored child, the one who received without ever needing to give back. And me? I learned how to fit myself into the spaces no one else wanted. The shade. The silence. By my 20s, I had moved to Seattle chasing independence, and ironically carrying the family with me through every paycheck. It started just once, the way most lifelong obligations do. My first job, my first real income, and suddenly Riley's tuition bill needed help. My mother's voice sounded proud yet expectant, like my success was already theirs to spend. I said yes automatically. One semester became another. Books, supplies, living expenses, the list stretched longer than my own breath. Riley never thanked me. Lorraine stopped pretending it was temporary. Victor stayed quiet, maintaining peace the same way a locked door maintains quiet, you just stop knocking. But the resentment that grew inside me wasn't from the money. It was from the way they acted like it was owed. I still remember the Christmas when I saved for months to buy Riley a laptop she needed for her coursework. She opened the box, blinked at the screen, and said, "Oh. I thought it would be the higher model." My mother just laughed, like Riley's ingratitude was cute, not cruel. Moments like that didn't stab, they accumulated. Quiet bruises layered over each other until eventually you forget what unbruised feels like. And then came the comment that shifted everything. My mother left her phone unattended one afternoon, and a message lit up. "Aunt, Amber pays for everything?" My mother, she's just the type. Born to support the family. I never confronted her. I just carried that sentence like a stone in my pocket, always there, always heavy. And I didn't know it yet, but the night they banned me from Riley's graduation, that stone was finally about to drop. Before we continue the story, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what would you have done in my place? And please like the video and subscribe for more powerful sibling betrayal stories and emotional journeys like this one. In the days leading up to that video call, something in the atmosphere felt wrong, like the faint heaviness before a thunderstorm. Riley had been unusually quiet, which never meant calm. With her, silence wasn't peace. It was planning. Lorraine, on the other hand, had become more clipped, her text sharp enough to scrape. "Has the next tuition payment processed? Please confirm the schedule." No greeting. No thank you. Just instructions. As if my paycheck was a dispenser and her messages were buttons. I told myself it was routine. This was the pattern I had accepted for years. But my chest felt tight in a way I couldn't ignore. Something was shifting, and not in the way families like mine ever admit. Then the first crack appeared. My bank flagged suspicious activity on an old card I barely remembered, a card I had once used for groceries back when my life still felt like mine. A calm representative walked me through the purchases, high-end shoes, boutique accessories, a weekend shopping spree that added up to nearly $4,000. My stomach sank. There was only one person bold enough to use my identity and expect forgiveness afterward. When I confronted my mother politely, Because old habits die slow, she laughed. You're being dramatic, Amber. Your sister needed a few things for graduation. Stop turning everything into an issue. Riley needed. I was dramatic. And the problem, unsurprisingly, was me. The conversation left my hands trembling, not from anger but from clarity. A clarity I'd spent years avoiding. I logged into my accounts and discovered the truth buried beneath the numbers like bones in a shallow grave. 2 more cards, both under my name, were nearly maxed out. Luxury items. Subscriptions. Purchases linked to Riley's email, Lorraine's shipping address, or their house back home. None of them mine. I wasn't supporting them. I was being harvested. And then came the blow that didn't hurt, it numbed. A screenshot popped up on my phone, mistakenly forwarded by someone in Riley's friend group. My name sat at the top of their chat. Riley, don't stress about money. Amber's basically our ATM. She'll pay. She always does. 3 simple lines that silenced everything inside me. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Just a stillness so absolute it felt like stepping into a room where no one knew I existed. That stillness carried me into the Zoom call the next night. Lorraine opened the meeting with command, not conversation. We don't want you at Riley's graduation. It's better for everyone if you stay away. Riley leaned into the frame, arms crossed like she was presiding over her own coronation. Yeah. You make things tense. Just, don't come. Victor kept his eyes down, the same way he always did when fairness and discomfort collided. A past version of me would have apologized, begged to understand, offered to fix whatever imaginary offense they invented. But that night, the old version stayed silent. What came out of my mouth was calm. Steady. Final. Then you'll never see another dollar from me again. Riley scoffed. Lorraine blinked. Victor shifted. They thought they had disinvited me from a single day. They didn't realize they had just severed themselves from the life they'd been feeding on for years. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something new rising inside me, freedom wearing the face of defiance. After I ended that Zoom call, my apartment felt unnervingly quiet, as if even the air was waiting to see what I would do next. For years, silence had been a punishment in my family, something used to force my compliance. But this silence felt different. It felt mine. I didn't cry. I didn't replay the call. I didn't try to fix what had never been broken, me. Instead, I opened my laptop. The screen lit up with the familiar student portal Riley depended on like a lifeline. 1 more semester pending. 1 more payment scheduled under my name. My money. My identity. My labor. I hovered over the scheduled payment. Not shaking. Not hesitating. Just aware. With a single click, I canceled the plan. There was no dramatic sound effect, no lightning strike to mark the moment. But inside me, something shifted so deeply that I could almost feel the weight falling off my spine. I wasn't just canceling a payment. I was cutting a chain. Next, I logged into my bank accounts. 3 cards, 3, were tied to unauthorized activity. Purchases I had never made. Deliveries to addresses that weren't mine. Subscriptions I'd never heard of. Every fraudulent charge had one thing in common, Riley. I froze each card individually, watching the confirmations pop up like tiny declarations of independence. Then I revoked the connected devices Riley and Lorraine had been freeloading on for years, my passwords, my saved cards, my accounts. Every time my finger tapped a button, the calm in my chest grew warmer. Not fiery like anger. More like a clean, steady light I hadn't realized I'd been searching for all my life. I gathered everything after that, statements, bills, emails, into a neat digital folder. Not to use as a weapon. Not to threaten them. But to see, plainly, the truth I had been avoiding. It wasn't support. It wasn't love. It was entitlement dressed up as family obligation. As I organized, I found an audio file I didn't even remember recording. It had been captured by accident during a speakerphone call months before. Curious, I pressed play. My mother's voice drifted through the speaker, smooth, amused, dismissive. "She'll pay," she said. Riley laughed in the background. "She always pays." Then the line that rewired something inside me. "It's basically her purpose." I closed the file slowly. I didn't feel shattered. I didn't even feel surprised. What I felt was a kind of clarity that almost felt like peace, the kind that comes when you finally stop lying to yourself. My phone buzzed. "Riley, did the payment go through?" "Lorraine, don't make this childish." "Fix it." "Victor, just breathe. Don't make things worse." Worse. As if the worst thing I could possibly do was stop funding the people draining me. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I logged out of every shared subscription they'd used under my name, music accounts, grocery deliveries, streaming platforms, even the household apps Riley had attached to her devices like parasites. The list was longer than I expected. Much longer. By the time I finished, the sky outside my window had deepened into a quiet shade of blue. I stood there barefoot on the cold floor, feeling my chest expand with a breath that felt brand new. They thought excluding me from a celebration would make me small. But all it did was give me the space to finally grow. 3 days passed before my mother finally broke the silence. The email subject line read "Urgent Family Meeting." But urgency from Lorraine never meant danger. It meant control slipping. A past version of me would have felt dread tighten around my ribs. This version simply clicked the link out of curiosity, almost like peeking into a room I no longer lived in. When the video call loaded, they were already there. My mother sat in the center, framed like a queen at a hearing. Her posture was perfect, her expression sculpted into disappointment. Riley lounged beside her, legs crossed, irritation carefully blended with entitlement. Victor hovered in the background, hands tucked into his pockets, looking like a man who wanted to vanish rather than intervene. "You're late," Lorraine snapped, as though I were an employee showing up to a meeting she paid me to attend. "I'm exactly on time," I said. My voice didn't shake. She ignored that. "We need to address your behavior." "My behavior?" The irony nearly made me laugh. I stayed quiet. Silence unsettled her more than arguments. Lorraine lifted her chin. "Riley's graduation is in less than 2 weeks. They will not allow her to walk unless the remaining balance is paid. You know this. You've always handled the finances. So fix it." Riley sighed dramatically. "Seriously, Amber? I can't believe you're making this harder than it needs to be. Just do what you always do." There it was. The raw expectation. The unspoken rule: I give. They take. Always. I looked at them through the screen, not as family, but as people I had been trained to serve. "I'm not paying," I said calmly. For a moment, the silence thickened. Lorraine blinked like she'd misheard. Riley's jaw tensed. Victor straightened slightly, as if bracing for impact. Lorraine recovered first. "Don't be ridiculous. You're upset. Fine. But do not sabotage your sister out of spite." "I'm not sabotaging her," I said. "I'm stepping out of a role I never agreed to play." That sentence landed sharper than I expected. Victor raised a hand weakly. "Let's not escalate this. We can talk." "You never talk," I cut in gently. "You dictate." Riley scoffed. "Nobody dictated anything. You're acting like we abused you." Instead of arguing, I clicked share screen. Their faces froze when they saw it, a folder neatly organized with statements, screenshots, charges, emails. My entire financial history with them laid out in cold truth. "What is this?" Lorraine demanded. "The truth," I replied. "Unauthorized purchases. Cards opened under my identity. Expenses tied to Riley's email. Deliveries to their home. Luxury items bought with a grocery card. Subscriptions they never told me about. Tuition reinstated without my consent. Every piece of it reflected back on the screen like a confession they never intended to give. Riley's face reddened. This is blown out of proportion. Then I opened the audio file. Her laugh. My mother's voice. The sentence that carved itself into me. She always pays. It's basically her purpose. When the recording ended, no one spoke. My mother recovered enough to say, "I can't believe you recorded us." "I didn't," I said. "It was automatic." "But I listened." Riley folded her arms tightly. "You're being dramatic." "You committed fraud," I said quietly. "And I'm choosing not to file a report." Lorraine slammed her hand on the table. "You are not doing this. Riley deserves her moment. This family expects your support." "I don't owe you anything," I said. The sentence landed like a shockwave. Riley sputtered, "So you'll let me look stupid on graduation day?" "You're an adult," I said. "Your education is your responsibility." Lorraine's voice cracked. "You've changed." "No," I corrected. "I finally stopped living by your script." Then came the final threat, her favorite weapon. "If you walk away now, don't expect this family to welcome you back." My fear rose for a second, then dissolved. "I'm not leaving my family," I said softly. "I'm leaving the people who never treated me like part of it." I hovered over the leave meeting button. "I wish you well," I said. "But I'm done paying for your peace." Then I clicked it. The screen went black. And in the dark, something new began. The days that followed felt strangely hollow at first, like stepping into a room where all the noise had been drained out. My phone stayed quiet, no demands, no guilt-laced reminders, no passive-aggressive updates. Just silence. A silence that should have felt unsettling but instead felt like breathing new air after living too long underwater. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up thinking about who needed something from me. I wasn't checking my bank account with dread. I wasn't rehearsing polite responses to messages designed to control me. The absence of their voices didn't hurt. It healed. The first real update came from the university. A polite email, almost apologetic in tone, confirming that due to non-payment and a flagged impersonation incident, Riley would not be permitted to participate in the graduation ceremony. They didn't mention names, but the implication was loud enough to echo through my apartment. Someone had finally told her no. Not with anger. Not with emotion. Just with boundaries. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smirk. I didn't even feel vindicated. I simply sat on my couch, sunlight sliding across the hardwood floor, and let the reality settle inside me. 8 years of financial strain. 8 years of being the responsible one. 8 years of being the solution to problems I never caused. And for the first time, the weight wasn't on me. 3 days later, my father showed up without warning. When the front desk called my apartment, I almost didn't believe it. Victor had never visited me. Not once. He always said travel was too complicated or not necessary. But there he was, in the lobby, looking like a man who had rehearsed his reason for coming but forgot it on the way over. When I opened my door, he didn't step forward. He didn't reach for a hug. He stood there quietly, with a grief I couldn't place. "She's devastated," he said. I didn't need to ask who. "Your mother?" He nodded. "She's pretending she's fine, but she's not. And Riley, she's furious. She blames you." He exhaled heavily. "We didn't realize how much we leaned on you." I didn't let the guilt seep in this time. I didn't rush to reassure him or soften the blow. "You leaned because I never stepped aside," I said gently. He looked exhausted, like someone who had been holding up a collapsing roof for too long. "Are you coming back?" he asked. Not accusing. Not demanding. Just tired. "Not unless the terms change," I replied. He didn't argue. That surprised me more than anything. Maybe he finally saw the truth. Maybe he had always known but never admitted it. Or maybe he had run out of excuses. He left with a quiet goodbye, a word that didn't feel final, just honest. And the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was mine. I used to think love meant endurance, that giving until you were hollow was noble. But the day they told me I wasn't welcome, I learned something I should have known all along. Love without respect isn't love. It's servitude. And I had finally stepped out of it. The strange quiet that settled over my life in the following weeks wasn't loneliness, it was detox. Every day without their demands felt like peeling away another layer of noise I didn't know I'd been carrying. For years, I mistook chaos for connection. Urgent texts for importance. Obligation for love. Now, the absence of all that didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like relief. The real shift happened the morning I woke up and didn't immediately check my phone. No frantic scanning of notifications. No anxiety waiting to be triggered. The silence wasn't a void, it was protection. It gave me space to finally sit with myself. To my own surprise, I didn't miss them. Not the messages, not the expectations, not the guilt disguised as affection. What I missed, what I mourned, was the version of me who believed they cared. A few days after my father's visit, I received something unexpected, an email from the university addressed directly to me. Not a threat. Not a demand. A thank you. They explained that due to the impersonation attempt on the tuition account, they had been able to tighten their protocols. They acknowledged the unfair burden placed on me and ensured no charges would be linked to my identity going forward. They informed me, gently, that Riley had been officially removed from the graduation list. I stared at the message for a long time, not triumphantly, not angrily, just processing. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about revenge. It was about realizing I had spent nearly a decade holding up a structure that was never meant to stand. Riley wasn't devastated because she lost a moment. She was devastated because she lost her safety net. And that safety net was me. That same evening, I received a text from an unknown number. Unknown, congrats. You ruined everything. Riley. There was no greeting. No ownership. Just blame. Another message came seconds later. Riley, you humiliated me. You selfish b******h. Asterisk. The words didn't pierce me the way she intended. They slid off me like water off a stone. Because for the first time I could see the truth clearly. Riley wasn't angry that I said no. She was angry that she no longer had control. I didn't respond. There was nothing worth saying. The next day, Lorraine finally resurfaced, not with an apology, but with an accusation. She emailed me a long, self-pitying message about how families should support one another, how I had chosen the wrong moment to rebel, and how she hoped I was happy now that Riley's big day was destroyed. Not a single line acknowledged the years of financial abuse. Not one sentence admitted fault. Not one moment reflected any form of accountability. And somehow, that was the final confirmation I needed. You can't fix people who refuse to see you as human. That night, I made a decision, not out of anger, not out of retaliation, but out of self-protection. I was done allowing their chaos into my life in any form. For the first time, the boundary wasn't a line I drew. It was a wall. Solid. Permanent. Non-negotiable. And standing behind it, I felt something I had never experienced in their presence. Stillness. Strength. And the quiet, steady beginning of my own life. The following week unfolded like a slow exhale, steady, unfamiliar, and strangely freeing. Without the constant tether to my family's emergencies, my life finally began to feel like my own. I spent evenings walking along the Seattle waterfront, watching ferries drift over the water like they had nowhere urgent to be. I envied them at first, then realized I had finally joined them. The silence from home didn't break until the night before Riley's graduation was supposed to happen. My phone buzzed around 11 p.m. with a notification from a private number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. Unknown, you think this is over? It didn't say her name, but I didn't need it. Riley's anger practically had a fingerprint. Another message followed immediately. Mom's crying. Dad's stressed. This is your fault. You did this. There it was again, the pattern that shaped my childhood. Their choices, somehow, were always my responsibility. But this time, the guilt didn't latch onto me. It hovered for a second, then dissolved. I typed a reply, then deleted it. They didn't want truth. They wanted access. And I had already locked every door. The next morning, the morning Riley would have walked the stage, I woke up to a barrage of missed calls. 10 from my mother, 3 from Riley, 1 from my father. The messages that followed ranged from accusatory to desperate. Lorraine, you've broken this family. Lorraine, if you had a heart, you'd fix this. Riley, everyone will know it's your fault I'm not graduating. Victor, please call. Just talk to us. Old me would have panicked. Old me would have felt sick with guilt. Old me would have rushed to make them feel better, even if it meant sacrificing myself. But this version of me? She had finally woken up. I didn't answer any of them. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I was done hurting myself. Instead, I spent the morning at a nearby cafe with a cup of coffee and a journal I hadn't touched in years. As I started writing, I realized something heartbreaking. I had never written about myself. Only about them. Their needs. Their crises. Their expectations. All the pages before were reminders of who I had been trained to be. So I flipped to a clean page and wrote a sentence that felt like stepping out of a cage. I am not responsible for the choices other people make about their own lives. Just writing it down felt like reclaiming a room inside me that had been boarded up since childhood. Around noon, I got one final email, from the university. A ceremonial notice. Students who missed graduation due to outstanding payments would be invited to a later ceremony once the balance was resolved. It was a polite, administrative solution. But I knew Riley. A delayed ceremony wasn't what she wanted. She wanted the spotlight. The moment. The validation. And her anger toward me wasn't about loss, it was about entitlement being interrupted. That evening, I took a long walk through my neighborhood. The air was warm, the sky streaked with soft colors, and for the first time in a long time I felt present in my own body. My own life. No buzzing phone. No crisis. No chain pulling me back. Just me. I didn't realize it then, but that day marked the quiet beginning of a life where I no longer played the villain or the savior in someone else's story. I was finally becoming the main character in my own. In the days after Riley's missed graduation, the storm I expected never came. No dramatic confrontation at my door, no carefully crafted apology, no sudden flash of accountability. What came instead was something stranger. Nothing. A quiet, aching nothing. At first I thought they were giving me space. But the more I sat with it, the more I understood, silence wasn't peace. It was retreat. A retreat into the story they could control, where I was the villain who abandoned them, not the daughter who finally crawled out from under years of exploitation. And strangely, that realization didn't hurt. It brought clarity. The next week passed gently. I worked. I cooked meals without rushing. I slept without waking up to anxiety pricking my ribs. My life began to feel less like an emergency room and more like a home. Then, one quiet morning, my father called. Not to beg. Not to guilt. Just to talk. I hesitated before answering, but something in me softened. When I picked up, his voice was steady but tired, like someone who had been holding the truth inside his chest for too long. I wanted to tell you, he began slowly, that I'm sorry. Those 2 words stunned me. Not because they fixed anything, they didn't. but because they were the first real acknowledgement from anyone in my family that I had been hurt. He explained, in fragments, that he had always known something was wrong. That Lorraine and Riley leaned on me too heavily. That he didn't intervene because it felt easier to keep the peace than challenge the system in our house. But it wasn't peace, I said softly. It was silence. He let out a long breath. I know. There was a moment where neither of us spoke. No accusations. No excuses. Just the slow unraveling of years of unspoken truth. I don't expect you to come back, he said. But I wanted you to know. I see it now. I should have seen it sooner. It wasn't enough to rebuild a relationship. But it was enough to start a different one. Before the call ended, he said, "Take care of yourself, Amber." Really? And for once, I believed he meant it. When I hung up, I sat in the quiet for a long time, absorbing the weight and the lightness of everything that had changed. I realized something important. I wasn't healing from losing my family. I was healing from believing they were supposed to be the kind of family they never were. Some wounds aren't from absence, they're from expectation. That evening, I walked out onto my balcony. The city hummed softly below me, alive and indifferent. I looked out over the skyline and felt something powerful settle inside my chest. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just self. A version of me I had never met before. A version who didn't apologize for existing. A version who didn't confuse love with sacrifice. A version who finally understood that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you choose who to let through. If even one person had treated me with respect, maybe the story would have unfolded differently. But they didn't. And I finally stopped waiting for them to become people they never intended to be. So I moved forward. Quietly. Fully. Unapologetically. And if any part of my story feels familiar to you, even the smallest part, just know this. You're not weak for walking away. Sometimes walking away is the first time you walk toward yourself.